Growing up, I can remember a good day would have been being able to wash the car. I joke around and partially remember if we were good, we got to wash the car. I can remember being about 14, the first time I ever got to drive the car. I had washed it and waxed it and detailed it, and I was actually going to an 8th grade dance, and my parents made this agreement with me that if I had a date or whatever, they would take me in one of the cars and drop me off like everybody does in front of the school and stuff. But if I didn't have a date, that they dropped me off in the Corvette. Being who I am, there was no way I was going to have a date to this, because I got to ride in the Corvette. So again, I spent the entire day washing and waxing and cleaning the car. And at the end of the day, my parents said, we lived on a dead-end street, and we lived about 4 houses away from the end. And they allowed me to drive it to the end of the street and back. And at this point in time right now, I remember that drive. It's just an incredible feeling of being able to drive something that, at that point in time is an untouchable car. The Chevy Corvette was the epitome of everything General Motors has ever made. And having the ability to actually, get to drive it at that age is just incredible. I'm Mark Talon. I currently get to house this 1967 Corvette in my garage. My mother, Mary Lou, she owns the car. My mother and father actually bought it together as their first vehicle back in 1967. They ordered it, they spec'd it, probably for a good 5 to 7 years. They drove it as their only vehicle. At the time, we all lived in upstate New York, where in certain areas like Syracuse, you got 300 inches a year. You had to be careful how you drove a car like this. But my dad really specifically wanted to road race the car. There's a few different engine options you could have got. You could get the small block, the 327, the big block 427. Although the 427 had a lot more power, it was a very tough daily driver because it fouled out plugs. And being this was a car that was their only vehicle, they were going to regularly drive this, and changing plugs a couple of times a week, even though that was the norm back then, it was a lot of work, especially in the winter. So my dad opted for the largest horsepower small block 327 that you could get that was not fuel injected. He wanted to stick with something that he knew that he could tune. So the 350 horse 327 was the option with the 4-speed transmission. It's interesting, but even back in '67, from the factory, they had options with the shifter assembly that you could yourself adjust them into a short throw or a long throw in the 4-speed configuration. Obviously, my dad being the hot rodder, he opted for adjusting it for the short throw, and again, his intention was to road race it a little bit when he got it. So it didn't have any of the expensive or heavy options like power windows or air conditioning. It doesn't have power steering. It does not have power brakes. Thank God he got a radio in it at least. But even back in 1967, a car like this came with 6-piston disc brakes all the way around, which again, even for today's standards, all the way around a vehicle to have disc brakes is something 50 years ago was unheard of. So the handling characteristics of it are just absolutely incredible to this day. The car currently still has just under 51,000 miles, and those are original miles. The speedometer, yes, it still does work. I know there's a million Corvettes out there that just under 50,000 miles, they managed to break the speedometer cable and stop working for some reason, but this one still works. So when my parents looked at buying this and stuff like that, they went through a few different color schemes that they were looking at, and GM's original color code for it was Goodwood green. They went back and forth over what they called saddle interior, but I'm not sure who exactly won out, but they picked the white interior. The car is all original. You know, obviously we've maintained it. There's obviously been some things that have been done to it, but this is a numbers matching, original engine and transmission, rear end, bumpers, body, you know, doors, hood, all that stuff that came from the factory are still on it and still functioning. Pretty incredible piece of machinery. For the age of this car, it definitely has some incredible performance characteristics. I've been fortunate enough to drive enough vehicles in my short time here on Earth that I could be a little biased and it could be a little bit of my history, but this is still one of the best performing vehicles ever that I've been able to drive. It's just smooth, it's accurate. This car is all original, so the suspension has not been changed. It is over 50 years old, but it drives incredibly well. It's just fun. It starts right up on a dime. Everything about it is how you would expect to purchase or have a classic car that you can get into and just enjoy. You don't always want to tinker with them, you don't always want to work on them, and this is one vehicle that just starts and drives and runs really well every time you get in it. It's something that I've spent a lot of time over the years trying to help maintain, trying to take care of and make sure that, you know, it stays in the family and take care of the little things. And by no means is it perfect, but it's perfect for us. So because it was, you know, it was my parents' only vehicle, and it was, you know, the daily driver. Dad drove it to work every day, and I feel like owning this car was one of those, you had made it in life, right? This was making it to that level that meant you had done well for yourself, you know? Not that it was above anybody else, it didn't have anything to do with anybody else, but this was your goal. Like, this is what, you know, something that growing up my dad wanted to accomplish. I just feel like my dad was so appreciative, like he was so proud and he felt, I guess, humbled or honored that he got to finally make that. You know what I mean? And that was something that my parents did together and stuff like that. He was so proud of that every day before he went to work, he washed the car. I mean, we're talking for years, every single day. One of the outcomes of that, or the results, was that he actually rubbed the paint off the front of the vehicle in a couple of spots. He wore the paint away in several areas because there's only so much thickness and there's only so much you can wash off, and eventually he got it down to, he had the primer coming through in a few spots. Mom still owns the car. She allows me to keep it at the house, again, mostly if I'm a good boy. We take it out once in a while and have a lot of fun with it. You know, for me, it's something that's been in the family longer than I have. I joke around about that a little bit, but it has. Again, I'm not sure who they love more. I've had bouts with that my entire life on what's more important, the car or me. Luckily, it's never come to a decision on which one we had to get rid of, so we've kept them both, I guess, in the family. The car is just really, it means a lot. It's definitely an important part for me of everything that I've grown up around. I mean, I feel like we got lucky. We got to help Dad work on some of the cars, but I think because our arms were smaller, we got to change the spark plugs in some of those very tight locations. And luckily, Dad at least let the engine and the exhaust system cool down enough to not burn us. But it was our pleasure, or our, you know, I guess it was our privilege to be able to work on a car. You know, it was joy to be out there and work on this stuff. I do remember a time when I was younger. This was the turning point, and I was pretty young. Don't remember how old I was. I remember that for a couple of years we kept the Corvette at my grandparents' house. Mom and Dad and me and my brother Dave, we went to go pick the car up and spend the weekend with them. Dad had to do a bunch of stuff to get it ready. You know, you change the oil, change the plugs, all the little things you gotta do, make sure that it's running right. I remember spending the day, the weekend, watching cartoons or whatever, and my brother Dave actually helped Dad do all that stuff out in the garage to get the car ready. I remember when Sunday came and it was time to go home, I had to ride home in the foreign car with my mom, and Dave got to ride home in the Corvette because Dave had put the time in. And nothing, I think, more affected me than not being able to ride in that car. And that was like a light switch. Like, if that's all it takes to get to ride in the car, then from now on, I'm working on the cars. And I don't think I ever, I ever looked back. Like, it was such a turning point. I can't tell you how upset I was that I couldn't get to ride in the car on the way home. I appreciate them, and I guess I'm hopefully doing this one a service by keeping it running and getting to enjoy it. So.